Hello, hello, Youest you listeners, my fantastic soul family out there. I hope that you are feeling well, doing well. And I got to tell you, you are in for such a treat. I'm so excited to have literally one of my favorite peeps. She is a kindred sister and someone that has so much wisdom packed in her for the amount of years she's done on this planet. She's got incredible powerful wisdom and just life experience to share, all about healing and stepping into your most powerful unmuted life. So let me introduce you to Brianna Greenspan. Brianna has been using the power of positive affirmations for the past 10 years to overcome the physical challenges that being born with a chronic invisible illness brings about. Defying the logic of doctors and the temptation to be a victim, Brianna has dedicated her life to healing herself while empowering others to take the ownership over their own physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Brianna is the author of the Miracle Morning Art of Affirmations Coloring Book, and she's used this book. It has been designed to combine affirmations with mindful artistry. It's an amazing book. I love it. My kids have loved it. And it's all about visualizing the success that you're looking to create and using affirmations within this book as inspiration along your journey. Brianna Greenspan is also a chronic illness advocate, mentor for teens and young adults with chronic illnesses, author, and genetics consultant at Gene by Gene, a genetic testing company based in Houston, Texas. I am so grateful to interview you, Brianna. This has been like in the making for a long time. We were joking before we started. I think I asked you to be a guest like literally at like episode 7, and now we're at like 277 or whatever we're at. So it's all good, divine timing, but I'm so glad you finally said yes and unmuted yourself.
Oh, Julie, it's such an honor to be here with you today. You're such a blessing and such a light in the world. And I'm so proud of all the accomplishments you've created. And now that I have finally unmuted myself, I'm so honored to be on your podcast.
Yay. Well, I think just to give a little backstory, because this is just, it's too good not to share. When we met, so Brie and I met over a few years ago now, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, through Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning community, through his and John Berkoff's mastermind, the Quantum Leap Mastermind at that time. And all I know is that I saw this like amazing, soulful, kind of funky woman, like you were hanging on a chaise lounge. It was before the whole weekend started, and I went up to you and there was like the biggest butterfly around you. And I'm like, all right, who is this? And I was like, where do you live? And you said, everywhere. I was like, okay, this is my type of awesome sauce friend. And the next thing I knew, you followed me, you helped me with my books, which I'd brought and I was going to sign, didn't realize I had to sign a lot of them. And you were like stacking them and filming it and helping and organizing. And I'm like, who is this unicorn? So that was like, that's how we met. And it's just gotten better and better.
I loved that moment because I could clearly see that it was the beginning of you stepping into your power and you starting to shine. And I saw that there were a couple of things that needed to happen, a couple of T's that needed to be crossed, a couple of I's that needed to be dotted in that moment in order for you to shine so brightly. And it literally, it's like 40 minutes of my life. And so I just thought to myself, if I could serve in any way, what better than to support you in your moment? And it was so beautiful to see how you've transformed since then, how you've been able to impact so many thousands and thousands of individuals. And it's just an honor and privilege to witness you shining so brightly. And so it was so fun to be your little unicorn.
Well, I appreciate that, Brie. I will say I just had a flashback, and then I really do want to dive into this, like stepping forward and shining and your journey with that, because I think it's been really interesting to watch that. I have to just say, for those in the world who know of Tucker Max, who is founder of Scribe Media, do you remember I got up with my book and he was like, just ripped it apart, the cover, and it ended up being great. It was a great example of like, he actually just gave me some very, very important feedback, which was, this is for everyone, but you're really targeting women, and to do that more clearly. And it was like, I get it. And I actually redesigned it, and I'm thankful for the feedback. But I remember you were like right next to me and you were like, are you okay? I was like, I think so. I think
And
I'm
it was beautiful because then your coaching program and all of the different ways that you've shown up to serve have really been in alignment with understanding what he was saying, not from
yeah.
a like critical standpoint, but from a very insightful standpoint. And
Yeah.
you dug deep into, okay, my wisdom is for everyone. However, my niche audience is this type of avatar, and I'm going to serve those people at the highest level. And you've done that masterfully. And so I really think that that was a beautiful teaching moment. I love that you mentioned it because there's two ways you can handle situations when somebody gives you critical and very insightful feedback. You can
Yeah.
ignore the insight and just feel like you heard something that was unsettling, or
Yeah.
you can literally unpack it and say, what am I meant to learn here? And how am I meant to show up to serve in a bigger way because of what I just learned? And you did that in such a beautiful way. And so kudos to you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. I so appreciate it. I had a moment of like, hold on, we're going to go back to you. I'm like, enough of, but thank you. I received that. And I do think what you're saying, it all ties in, being receptive, being open, being willing to step forward, to shine, to be your whole fullest Youest you, your whole self. And I'm curious, maybe you could just talk a little bit before we even get to, because I've watched you bring up the butterfly that was there kind of symbolically when I met you. I just remember it was this huge, I've never seen one so big. I'm like, this girl is magical because I don't see butterflies around people like this. And you have stepped into a whole new version of yourself. But I think for those who don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit about, I mean, I remember you showed me the video of how much medication you were taking and what
Mm.
it was like having this kind of chronic illness. And I say this because those listening who have challenges, especially if they're health challenges or well-being challenges, you are extraordinarily, you're so inspiring and it's encouraging and empowering. So maybe just to give us a little sense of what it was like growing up with this invisible chronic illness and how, and we'll get into the journey of how now you're really supporting and advocating for others too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will, to take you back on this journey, from the moment I was born, I never stopped crying until I could talk. The moment I started talking, it was like, ouchie, bobo, problem, doctor, hospital, assistive device, medication. And it was just one thing after another of challenge, challenge, challenge. And the overarching theme of that entire first 20 years of my life was you can't, you won't, and you'll never. And there were so many limitations that were put on my life from others that were their opinion. But what I really realized is that when somebody tells you their opinion, that is just simply their opinion. But when you take that on and you say, I have, I am to someone else, then that is you internalizing someone else's opinion and vocalizing it to affirm it to the world. And so I recognized at one point that I was doing a lot of vocalizing to the world what labels had been put on my life. And there were so many complications. I mean, from neck braces and heart monitors and, walkers and surgeries and so many medications and shots and just a whole gamut of challenges, quite frankly, a lot of pain, a lot of persistent symptoms that were coming up over and over and over again. I often say it was really complicated to be able to walk, talk, see, hear, and breathe all at the same time. And what I learned early on is that there were so many things that I needed to opt out of because I didn't feel I was capable of. And by the time I was 20, I lost the ability to walk after a failed surgery. And shortly after that was really when I made the conscious decision to take my life into my own hands. I knew that I was going in a very dark direction. And I started looking for what were the other things that were out there that were available that I could add into my toolbox, if you will, to be able to be as strong as possible, as often as possible. And that led me to a whole plethora of modalities that I didn't actually know existed during my childhood. And so the way that I was able to show up to handle any situation that came my way was drastically different because I was armed with so many different rituals, habits, modalities, tools that quite frankly weren't even on my frame of reference as a child. And so, obviously the doctors that I went to were doing the best that they could. All of these specialists thought they had my best interest in mind. However, there was a lot of limiting thinking.
Yeah.
And as a result, there were only a few possibilities on the table for me my whole childhood. And I'm not going to say that all of these things have just magically gone away. I still have a lot of health challenges, however, which comes with a progressive genetic condition. However, the way that I handle them is completely and totally different. I'm able to identify what is going on and what I need to do in that moment in order to best serve myself. And I've recognized that it's not really about not getting knocked down. It's about how quickly you can pick yourself back up. And when I was a child, I used to get knocked down, and then I would get knocked down again, and I would stay down, and then the next symptom would come. And it was just this spiral of, oh, you just threw up, and then you dislocated something, and then you this, and then the back pain, and then, this spiral of complications. And now I am so well equipped to handle whatever circumstance comes my way. And as a result, this I won't, I'll never narrative is no longer something that I really resonate with. Instead, it's I can, I will. When am I going to make that possible?
Wow. I'm thinking about, for most of us, we really truly can't, it's hard to comprehend to be in that kind of pain. As you were saying, I was thinking of, I know we both are huge fans of Juliana Ray and Unified Mindfulness. And when you do the whole see, hear, feel, and I'm like, wow, you had trouble see, hearing, and feeling. Interesting, like the basic senses. And I'm like, yeah, like just to be in life, such a young person with that. And I know it's called Stanlows Syndrome, this chronic condition you have. And the thing is, you were saying, I know it's invisible, you can't see it. And so it's so fascinating, because for those who don't know Brianna yet, well, you will after this. The amount of, like, what you did with me, you were like, oh, it's 40 minutes of my life, but you're standing in and helping me with those books when everyone else, everyone was wonderful. And like, you like rushed in. I mean, you are somebody who is just about uplifting and empowering humanity and doing this in a myriad of ways. I mean, everything from, for those who are into Clubhouse, Brianna is the hostess of the mostest, the total like queen moderator of this room every single morning from 8 to 10 Eastern or whatever time zone you're in. But every morning you are moderating that. You are already, I know, working on so many different, on behalf of children and advocacy, rights and just the way that you live. And, obviously writing this book, this affirmation book, and using the Miracle Morning, teaching this. No one would have a clue that you've experienced this or that you still have pain. I remember, because we've had so many, gratefully, so many times I've gotten to be with you. And I remember you were like, hey, can you just hang with me for a minute, or massage my shoulder, or like, just stay here for a sec, 'cause I'm not feeling great. And I was like, you aren't? Like, your attitude, your belief system. And I'm not saying to downplay when there's pain, but there's something you've learned that you've mastered, Brianna, in your, I say short time here because, we're not talking, you're not 85, but you have wisdom of an 85-year-old. And maybe to just share with us, because I love what you said, that I can't, I won't, I'll never is now, I can, I will, and I can, and I'm here. Something like that. How you have, so you started to take your health in your own hands, you started to see, and I love what you said. And for those listening, this is really important. When you start, this is what you said, when you start vocalizing to the world the labels that are put on your life, you are affirming that. That is huge. And so Tell us a little bit about the health, the healing you've had as a result of affirmations, as a result of this shift in how you're being.
Yeah. You hit it right on the head. This is such a powerful concept for people to understand. So at one point, I said to myself, if affirmations are everywhere and what we say to ourselves in a conscious level and on a subconscious level truly matter, why am I consistently affirming to the universe that I'm handicapped by having a handicap placard and by parking in handicap spaces?
Yeah.
Like, I understand, what if I have a seizure? What if I have, I understand there are so many episodes and so many variables. But at this point, when this insight went off in my head, I recognized that if I'm capable, I should affirm to the universe that I'm capable. And eventually, I consistently started doing the work, physical therapy every single day, doing the miracle morning every single day, which consists of meditation, affirmations, visualization, physical therapy, reading, and journaling, and doing these practices and moving my body in a constructive way. What I learned is that there are so many limitations that I was living that didn't actually resonate with who I was becoming. And as a result, I had to start stripping away these old neural pathways that no longer served me to make space to create new ones. And these new neural pathways were, I am strong. I am powerful beyond measure. I am capable. And when I would say to myself, you know what, you're capable of walking to that door. You're not going to faint. You're capable of going to that class. You're capable of going to the grocery store, in like walking into the grocery store. That used to be a huge challenge because I'd have these, taking me back, I'd have these crazy episodes. And if you know anything about autonomic dysfunction, it's like, you feel like you're having like you just walked up 10 flights of stairs, but you didn't do anything. And so if you stand up, then you might pass out, and just, it's a lot of complications. And so there were many reasons why I had a handicap placard, mostly because I had lost the ability to walk after a failed surgery when I was 20. However, so many other complications, especially when I acquired the neck brace, when the dysautonomia came on. And as a result, it was just like one symptom after another that reinforced that I was handicapped, and that there was reasons why not only why I was struggling, but that was going to be my life. And so I really took a hard look at, what was I saying to myself? What actions was I actually taking? And which of those things that I was saying and which of those actions that I was taking were actually serving me in a positive way, so that next week, next month, next year, and beyond, I would actually become a stronger version of myself, versus staying in that space of, this is the life I have and this is what will always be, and just being okay with that. And what I learned is that although you cannot take the symptoms or situations that you are born with or that develop away, you can definitely decide if you're going to let them define you, or if you're going to create your own definition for your life. And, there's a lot of vulnerabilities that I've had to lean into by openly communicating. Like you mentioned, there are times when I'm really unwell. Like there have been times we've been at conferences and I've had seizures or started throwing up aggressively, or just like had random episodes where I needed support. And I definitely was either going to opt out of the situation, ask someone for help, or really suffer. And, I've done enough work on myself to be able to say, if I need help, there are those around me that love me enough to be there to support me. That's okay. Everybody needs help sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because that's a complete 180 from where I was. In my younger years, I was so embarrassed, so ashamed. Go, no, who's gonna like judge me because I just threw up? Like, what's gonna, like whatever those symptoms were, it was like, I don't know why I had this whole narrative surrounding I needed to hide my illness, and that when people saw it, they wouldn't like me. And I understand that the majority of my childhood, that is the case. Like when people saw me sick, it was not well received. And a lot of the life that I live now is completely different than the life that I lived then, even though I still have a lot of the same complications. And it just goes to show how powerful your mindset is, how powerful rituals and habits and modalities that can serve us on a cellular level can be.
It is so, it's extraordinary and it's powerful what you're saying. I mean, you've lived it. I'm thinking back, one of the interviews I did, I don't know if you know Dr. Bruce Lipton, he wrote The Biology of Belief, and we were talking about this. And it just, and you can read the science of it, and it's like, we have this incredible, powerful healing mechanism within us at all times. And, you are the living example. So you might still have some of the same symptoms, but life literally is showing up like a 180. I mean, it's just how you're being, who you are in the world. And I can say, having been around you, watched what you've created, whether it's through the Miracle Morning community, through those that you're supporting with with chronic illnesses, most recently on this new, Clubhouse app, what you're doing there, showing up. I mean, you've chosen, and I think I heard you say this earlier, you've just chosen to show up. You've made a decision. And as you said, these rituals, these habits can change us at the cellular level. And you're really like, you're a walking, breathing example of this. And this is powerful. It's one thing, I think it's one thing to know this and like be in your head about it. It's another thing. And this is why one of the many reasons I wanted to talk to you and interview you is because you've applied it, you're living it, you're breathing it, you're sharing it, you're speaking it, and maybe we talk for a minute. You mentioned this earlier. You were so kind. You're like, Julie, I wanted to support you because you were shining your light. And, I know for you, and, it's kind of joking, but like, I remember asking you early on and you're like, someday. And so curious what has shifted, because, I think for those listening, probably many women, maybe some men or whatever you identify with, but I know there are many of us that have felt like, oh no, like I'll support everyone else. Who am I to do that? And thank goodness this has shifted, because the truth is, especially in the world now, we need you and everyone listening, all of you, to shine. I mean, truly, from that place of heart and purpose and passion. So what was the shift that had you start to like unmute yourself, girl?
Yeah, it's so good too, especially to talk about with you. So as you know, I've been a behind the scenes advisor to many people. You called me, you asked me for support. I am down to support, especially one-on-one. Yet, as you know, we've been in many live settings together, masterminds, podcasts, Zoom calls, live events, large scale experiences, where I've had huge opportunities to be able to be on stage, to speak from the audience, to be a participant, an active participant. And you've witnessed me always taking a backseat role, always. And in passing up opportunities that came my way, I was able to put other people like yourself on stages and do all kinds of amazing things to support those around me. But at a core level, at some level, it was because I was happy to be hiding myself.
Say more about that.
Yeah. And like, yes, it was also because I knew that, like, for yourself, you were ready to shine. You were there, you were in the game. And like, it was easy to tee up people like you who this was your time and space to shine. Whereas for me, I was definitely very complacent, being a behind the scenes hider, if you will. However, last year I had a really fascinating incident where I was a senior advisor of a global task force, and somebody asked me something point blank in a private setting. And I gave my authentic, true assessment of the situation and opinion and advice that was not well received. And afterward, they tried to bully me and ostracize me and manipulate me and then mute me. And something inside of myself said, you need to unpack this. You need to look deeper. What is happening here? And what came up for me is that I've muted myself ever since first grade, when I was a little sick girl and my kids kind of weren't well receiving of that. I never raised my hand ever again in class, and I never spoke again in any public setting. And so I literally went from this experience, I went into my miracle morning practice and I started to visualize on what would be made possible if I laid to rest that girl that loves to hide. And I stepped into the space of power that I was already living in behind the scenes, but in a much more forward-facing way. And what transpired is that this message kept coming up for me, and it said, how can you expect others to not mute you if you mute you?
Yeah. Wow.
And then I said, no more. And what it was actually fascinating because in that scenario, I was very nervous. I've never had a situation where somebody very intensely did not receive what I was saying in a authentic and like open arms type way. And everybody else that was brought into the situation just started affirming me, saying, hey, you were right. You spoke up. You spoke up in the name of goodness. You spoke up in the name of truth. You stood your ground. And I've never been more proud to know someone who stands in their integrity, even when it's difficult. And I went, really? I guess that's who I am. I guess that's who I was in that moment. And a light bulb went off as these characters that I respected just kept saying, hey, I can't wait for you to shine brighter. I can't wait for you to do that in bigger ways. I can't wait for you to unmute yourself. And all of that was happening while I was doing these like miracle mornings, unpacking why I'd muted myself to begin with. And so for anyone who is muted, my number one piece of advice is to look within yourself and to really do some deep work and ask yourself, when was the moment that you decided to mute yourself? And how might the world be a brighter place by you unpacking that old narrative? And, ever since, where I would say no, I've said yes. Where I was offered a podcast, a stage, a clubhouse room, a this or that. If it resonated, if it resonated, if I had the time, instead of making an excuse and saying, no, you should have this person on your podcast, you should moderate with this person, I would say yes. And that has led to a whole world of meaningful interactions where I've been able to serve at a much higher level, tens of thousands of individuals impacted on a weekly basis versus 10 or 50 individuals impacted on a weekly basis. So,
yeah.
It all really stemmed from me doing that work to identify what was going on inside of me that muted me in the first place, and what evolution of myself did I need to step into in order to really grow in a way that I'd been hiding from before.
That's so, wow. That is so, it's beautiful. And I just observing you, and honestly, like I've watched you blossom and watched this unfold. And I have to say, when I first got on Clubhouse and was like, what the heck is this? And you guided me, and I started to see, especially in this room that you are the queen moderator of. I mean, it's really powerful, and it's changing hundreds and thousands of lives. And the part of me there was just, once I figured out, how to literally unmute yourself and how to like use this thing. It's a little interesting to learn. It's a learning curve for those who are like, what is it? Just give yourself space and grace. But my instinct was like, I wanted to jump up and give you a hug. I was like, I'm so glad. Like, thank goodness this badass powerhouse is up here friggin' like speaking and leading. Like, I've always seen that for you. But I think what you're saying is really important, that I'm thinking for anyone listening, we just to really to go back into your own experience and look and see where are you muted. And I got to tell you something, and it might be, because I know for me, it's not in my career. I feel like I had the whole thyroid throat chakra breakdown, and I was like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. But there are other areas I've seen where I can mute myself, and the whole, people pleasing or worried about people not liking you, or like you said, you didn't get well received when you weren't feeling well. So I think it comes under the umbrella of, fear of being judged, fear. I mean, really fear, truly. And the thing about you and what we are saying is you've chosen, and I've talked about this a lot here, is, we choose between fear and love. Fear can be disguised in about 1,000 different costumes. And you, I'm just seeing you like, as you're wearing red, I'm like, you took off the costume and you put on the, as you're wearing your big heart, you put on the costume of like, I'm here to make an impact. I'm here to really, to say what I feel and to help many. And the thing is, you did go from probably supporting many to really, truly impacting thousands, and hopefully way more than that. Huge. I mean, it's beautiful to watch. I've watched it with my own eyes.
Yeah. And it's really fascinating to, like, from a reflection standpoint, to witness where I was just 6 months ago, because it just takes one moment of us doing our own work. Yeah. And us listening to our own intuition. And that's the genius of our own, like, internal intelligence. We know so much more than we give ourselves credit for. We know when it's our time to bloom. We know all of these things that we often ignore. Yeah. And if we ignore them, then how can we possibly serve at the highest level? And I had been serving at a mediocre level for a very long time. There are many, many individuals who will say that I've helped them in, countless ways. However, helping one person who helps thousands is not the same thing as helping thousands of people who help thousands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it's a great quote. I'm like, yep, quotable right there. No, it's really, and look, there's some listening that it might be your desire is to work more one-on-one, and that's fine too. It's just, I think what we're really saying at the bottom of this is, I love what you just said, like, listen to that internal intelligence, trust your intuition. Don't let the fear, the stories, the words, the beliefs, the labels label you. You decide, and that's what you did. And you are somebody who's meant to impact thousands who impact thousands. And that, I know we both feel this way. There's quite a bit of work to be done, you could say it that way, to shift, to elevate, as Hal puts it with his, Miracle Morning tagline, but really to elevate consciousness, to change the whole way we interact with each other in this, planet as brother, sister humanity. And so for you, for those that do feel that calling, I think this is so inspiring, Bri. You've really, I've seen it, and especially the last 6 to 8 months, and the impact. That's the thing I want people to get, is that, when you get past and you might have fear sometimes. I don't know, maybe you do. Do you ever still feel a little bit of fearful, or is it kind of past at this point?
In certain spaces at certain times, as I'm continuing to evolve, as there's bigger opportunities, as like, I just ignored an opportunity to do 2 TED Talks. And I'm not saying I passed them up, but I literally ignored them. When you mentioned fear, I was like, oh, was that out of fear? What was that out of? Was that out of this amount of work that would need to go into them that I just don't have the time for right now? Whatever it was, I have sidelined certain opportunities that are still continuing to come my way. Yeah. And, I think we all do that in different ways when we're not ready for something, or when, there's work that we need to do in order to become ready that we might not be ready to do. Yeah. And so there is a lot of work to be done on an individual level and on a collective level to elevate the consciousness of humanity. And it's, an honor and privilege to be able to selflessly add value to as many people as possible. And I do want to switch gears for a second because
yeah, go for it.
you,
Switch
oh
them.
my gosh, because
Switch
you
them,
are
girl.
one of my favorite people. That same weekend when we met, I dropped into my intuition, and in the Miracle Morning community and in the like QLM community and all of these amazing empowerment communities,
Yeah.
I rarely, if ever, talk about my health situation. And also, I rarely, if ever, talk about my job. And I rarely, if ever, talk about the professional opportunities that come my way. And there was this moment that something in my intuition was screaming and saying, this new girl you just met, you should ask her about this potential opportunity that I was like, I was totally in my head toying with like, is this an opportunity I should take on? Is this not an opportunity? And the backstory is that I had gotten a phone call from the chief of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. And they had said that they discovered a condition that they thought affected 5% of the population. And they thought that I was the perfect person to help them decide whether or not that, like, to help validate or discredit this research and bring this to the world if it was validated. And I was like, what? Like, how did this even come into my world? Which is just another fascinating manifestation story for another day. But what was beautiful about our budding friendship is that I listened to my intuition. And sometimes you don't necessarily understand what your intuition is trying to say. And that's really the point of what I wanted to bring up, because when we stop the judgment of what our intuition is trying to say and stop the narrative of like, oh, I need to interpret what's happening. And you just kind of go with the flow and you trust the process. What transpires is like more magic than you could ever possibly know. And when I just casually shared with Julie, hey, I was given this opportunity. I'm thinking of, figuring out if this is something I want to explore or not. And you just said, hey, I know that guy. I think I know that guy. Actually, I do know that guy. And you ended up, for me, validating that, like, there were 3 different incidences, you and 2 others within the same week, that all validated that this is exactly what I need to be working on.
Yeah.
And what comes up for me there is that had I not listened to my intuition, had I not been aware of that, my intuition was saying, I need to talk to this seemingly random person about this seemingly random thing and get their opinion, even though like you were doing your book launch, like your realm of expertise was so far out of the realm of expertise of what I was talking about, yet you were exactly the person I needed to validate whether this was a new life direction I should go in. And so I just want to hammer back the point of, when we trust the process, even when we have no freaking idea where it's going to go, or like our logical mind can't actually interpret why our intuition is saying something, that's why our intuition is so powerful.
Drop the mic. You got it, girl. I have to say, that was really one of the cooler moments of like, what is happening? These worlds are colliding. And, I love this. This is like, goes along with, we get to decide, are you going to be open-minded? Are you going to be open to your inner intelligence, your inner wisdom, to your intuition? Are you going to, there's some that would say, oh, go with your, don't listen to that. And it's like, no, life is very different when you start, as you said, magical. I found that as well. And what was so neat is that I had no idea that by you asking me at that time, and I happen to know this person, how incredibly helpful it was to you for confirmation. And I know we've spoken before about this, you and I, and I've done shows on this, like really looking for, signs and evidence and being open to ways of getting, that evidence in your life. And so, it takes being awake and aware and getting out of the, we can get into that sleepwalking state very easily. Sleep at the wheel is the way I think of it. And I think as, of course, the Savers from Miracle Morning, the affirmation piece that you focus on, all of it, like this helps keep us in a space of openness. And like you said, trusting the process, that it might've seemed weird. I loved it. It made me so excited because I actually was like, wow, that was so cool that we both, knew the same person that would not normally be from someone we would know together.
Yeah. And I mean, and it just, then the next time my intuition went off, just a few days later, I was at another conference. It was almost the exact same scenario. I was literally helping someone before a conference so that they could shine brightly. And I casually mentioned this opportunity. And the next person that I said it to said, "Hey, I have that disease. I was part of his original cohort. There's nothing that I know in my soul more than you need to take this on because these people are dying and you are uniquely qualified to help save their lives." And I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, between you and this other woman, it was like right then. And then there was a third validation all within the same week. And what it really showed me is that I have no idea who these random people are and why my intuition is saying whatever it's saying. But when we start to track the evidence of our intuition speaking to us taking massive action, and the magical things that transpire, we start to recognize that when we trust the process, when we trust our intuition, when we take massive action, that there's a pattern that is emerging of possibility that wasn't there before, when we ignored our intuition, when we didn't trust the process, when we had to have our logical brain connect all the dots in order for us to take any action, when we lived in our heads. And so I have learned so much about myself just in recognizing how powerful my intuition is. And, this goes back to having health issues. When I was heavily medicated, I don't think I understood what my intuition was saying. Yeah. I wasn't even capable of listening. And so the last 13 years, I haven't taken any pharmaceutical medications. I am very, very holistic at this point to try and make sure that I'm serving my cells at the highest level. And everybody is different with the way that they show up for their health situations. But I've been able to retire assistive device after assistive device and medication after medication. And what I learned is that with each medication being eliminated, I was able to hear a little bit more about what my intuition was saying. Yeah. The clearer the less foggy my brain was, the clearer my intuition spoke to me. Yeah. And so I'm forever grateful for the awareness that when I am clouding my brain and my body, that I'm not able to hear as clearly. And as a result, I'm not able to take aligned action.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love how aligned action is really such a great way of saying it. So good. Oh my God, such good stuff. So before we wrap, the way I always like to end is to tap into what I call, oh yes, put it up for those watching. Show your book. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You know what? I think it's like in a kid's room right now.
Good, as
the
it
Miracle
should
Morning
be.
for Art of Affirmations. So great. Such a great for adults.
You know what? The other day, somebody was talking about the coloring book and I called it a pretend coloring book. And he goes, "That's right. It's not a coloring book." I was like, it's actually a positive psychology workbook that I created to help people shift their subconscious thinking and shift their subconscious programming and really elevate their environment in order to create new neural pathways. But we disguised it as a coloring book because it seemed a little fluffier.
Yeah. So great. So I love it. I love it. It's so great and it's fun. And I found it, adults, children, especially like stress, anxiety. Oh my gosh, get yourself, I have my gel pens with glitter. Anything works. So before we wrap, I call them heart flares. And I always like to ask if there is a heart flare, something that you did not say yet, or that's coming through you that is just like yep, I got to share this before we end. Need to share my heart flare. Any heart flares, Bri?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
The one thing that comes up for me all the time when people ask me, what do I do? Is I constantly just say, I try to do all the good I can in all the ways I can, at all the times I can, for all the beings I can, as often as I can. When we talk about heart flares, I had a heart flare knowing in real time that if I were to show up to serve you, you'd be able to shine your brightest light in a transition time for you. So for those who are listening, what would it look like for you to do all the good you can in all the ways you can, at all the times you can, for all the beings you can, as often as you can, in both little and big ways, each and every day? Because the truth is, the world needs us right now to show up in our integrity, to show up to shine our brightest light, and to continue to keep shining each and every single day, and to ignite that flame for somebody else along the way. And so I thank you in advance for showing up to keep shining, because the world needs all of our light collectively.
All right. Well, that I've got zero to say that could even top that. So all I'm going to say is, girl, you are that. That is you. You are all of that. And I hope that thank you, my beautiful, dear, sweet friends. Some of you I know, some we haven't met yet. I hope I get to meet all of you at some point. Who knows when? But I just want to thank you for tuning in, and I'm hoping this inspires you to really do what Bree just shared with us. To do all you can, to be as kind as you can in all the ways you can, every time you can, every way you can, and to be that, and then to ignite the flame in others so that that kindness spreads. And that is beautiful. Yeah. Well, I love you, my friend. I'm so grateful you were here today. Finally, 3 years later, it's all good.
I just had to unmute myself. So thank you so much for waiting patiently. And since then, you've had many, many mega stars on the show. So it's a blessing to be amongst them now.
You're a bright star, my friend. I love you, and thank you, thank you, thank you.